The gym always smelled of sweat and polished hardwood, a scent Logan had grown to associate with discipline, pressure, and a strange kind of belonging. He'd been on the team for 2 years now, and it was the only place where his mind quieted, where drills and sprints replaced thoughts, and the rhythm of bouncing balls and squeaking soles drowned out the noise of life. It had started as respect, deep, focused, disciplined admiration. Logan worked harder during practice, stayed after to run extra drills, took notes on everything Coach said. But over time, it became something else. Something quieter and far more dangerous. It was in the way his breath would hitch when Coach placed a firm hand on his shoulder during a correction, or the way his heart raced when their eyes locked just a second too long after a win. He wasn't sure when the line between admiration and desire had begun to blur. But now it was thick in the air, unspoken but undeniable. Coach Ramsey didn't play favorites, but Logan often felt like he was being watched, closely, carefully, like every move he made was being measured, weighed, and not just as a player. Late one Tuesday, after a grueling 2-hour practice, the rest of the team had filed out, leaving the echoing gym quiet and dim in the early dusk. Logan had lingered, as he often did, putting up free throws in a steady rhythm, sweat darkening the collar of his shirt. He didn't hear Coach come back in until the basketball rolled toward the sideline and a voice caught him mid-shot. "You always stay late." Logan turned, startled. Coach stood near the door, arms crossed, towel slung over one shoulder. The shadows played along his jaw, making him seem even more unreadable than usual. "Helps me focus," Logan said, trying to play it cool, though his pulse betrayed him. Coach walked in slowly, picking up the ball and bouncing it once, then again. "You're good, Logan. You don't need the extra work." That earned him a small, almost imperceptible smile. Coach dribbled once more and passed the ball to him. Logan caught it, fingertips tingling. It wasn't just the toss, it was the way Coach looked at him afterward. Steady, grounded, like nothing else in the world existed right then. Then Coach stepped forward, slow and deliberate. "You got someone picking you up?" Logan shook his head, walked. Coach nodded once. "Come lock up with me." They moved through the halls side by side, not close enough to touch, but close enough to feel the heat of each other's presence. The locker room was empty now, the air thick with the leftover heat from the showers and the metallic scent of bleach. Coach moved to his office and unlocked the small side door, gesturing for Logan to step in. "Grab water if you need." Logan sat on the edge of the desk, while Coach opened a mini fridge, tossing him a bottle. The cool plastic shocked his skin. "You push yourself harder than anyone I've coached in a long time," Coach said, leaning against the opposite wall. "Sometimes I wonder why." Logan met his gaze. "Maybe because I have something to prove." "To who?" Logan's breath caught. "Myself. You." The air shifted again, thicker now, more fragile. Coach didn't look away. "You don't have to prove anything to me, Logan." Silence again. This time it wasn't empty. It vibrated with something unspoken, raw and electric. Coach stepped forward, slow and cautious, as if drawn by something magnetic and inevitable. He came to a stop right in front of Logan, looking down at him with eyes that no longer hid anything. "I shouldn't feel this," he murmured. "But you do," Logan whispered back, voice trembling. Coach's hand lifted, hesitated, then brushed a strand of damp hair from Logan's forehead. The touch was light, but searing. Logan inhaled sharply, heat blooming across his chest, up his throat, into his cheeks. His own hand rose, almost without thought, fingers curling near Coach's wrist. They stayed like that, suspended in a moment that teetered on the edge of something they couldn't undo. Then Coach leaned in, his breath warm against Logan's cheek, close enough to feel, not quite a kiss, just the nearness, the promise. "I can't cross that line," he said, voice cracked and low. Logan's heart thundered. "Then don't, just stay here." Their foreheads touched. Not a kiss, but it felt more intimate than anything he'd ever known. Neither moved, neither spoke. The night, the silence, the heat between them, it held everything words couldn't, and in that moment, something shifted forever. And Logan felt it everywhere. The nearness they had shared in that office replayed in his mind like a looping dream. His coach's fingers brushing his forehead, the weight of their unspoken confession pressing between their bodies. It hadn't been a kiss, but it had unraveled something that couldn't be stitched back together. He wasn't the only one changed. Coach Ramsey had grown quieter, more careful. His feedback came more clipped, his touch during drills avoided altogether, as though physical distance could fix what proximity had awakened. But Logan could still feel him, like a current in the air, charged and impossible to ignore. Late one evening, Logan stayed behind after practice again. The team had long since gone, their voices fading down the corridor. Logan shot hoops in rhythmic silence, letting the ball rebound into his hands again and again, each thud echoing like a heartbeat. He didn't hear the door until it clicked shut behind him. "You like haunting this place, don't you?" Logan froze, the ball still in his grip. Slowly, he turned. Coach stood at the baseline, arms crossed, that same towel over his shoulder. He looked tired, like he hadn't slept well in days. But there was something else in his eyes, too. Something that pulsed between them like a tremor. Logan shrugged. "I like the quiet." Coach stepped forward. "You know, quiet isn't always safe, right? Sometimes it just gives the noise room to grow." There was silence. Then Coach sat beside him, just far enough not to touch, but close enough for Logan to feel the heat of his body. The lights overhead buzzed faintly. Far off, a water pipe hissed. But here, between them, there was only breath and space and the slow unraveling of something both of them had tried too hard to hold in. "I didn't sleep after that night," Coach said suddenly. "I kept thinking about what I should have done differently." Logan looked at him. "You didn't do anything wrong." Coach's jaw tightened. "Didn't I?" "You didn't kiss me." Logan's heart thudded against his ribs. He swallowed the trembling in his throat. "So did I." Coach turned his head slowly, eyes locking on Logan's like gravity. "You're not a kid, Logan, I know that. But I've got responsibility, a reputation, lines I'm supposed to protect." Logan leaned closer, his voice barely a breath. "So do I." There it was again, that space between them shrinking, tightening like a drawstring. The silence grew taut. The gym seemed to hold its breath. Coach's eyes dipped to Logan's mouth and back up. "This can't happen." But his voice wavered. Logan's voice was a whisper. "Then why are you still sitting here?" Coach didn't answer. Instead, his hand moved, slow, deliberate, settling lightly over Logan's. Their fingers didn't interlace, but Logan felt the pressure of each one like a match being struck. His breath caught. Heat surged through his chest and neck, flooding him with the ache of what had been buried too long. "I keep telling myself it's just a moment," Coach said, "that it'll pass, that I'll forget it. But I don't." Logan turned his hand over beneath Coach's, letting their palms meet, skin to skin. The contact was gentle but electric. His voice trembled when he spoke. "Neither do I." They sat that way for minutes, maybe more. hands resting together, forearms brushing, breath synced like tide and moon. The kind of quiet that didn't beg to be broken, the kind that stitched things in place. When they finally stood, it was wordless. Coach didn't say goodbye. Logan didn't ask for more. But as they parted ways at the gym door, something passed between them. A silent agreement, a promise, unspoken. And the line between restraint and longing grew thinner still. The autumn chill crept in slowly, crisping the morning air and threading golden light through the thinning trees outside the gym. Practice ran like it always had, laps, drills, formations. But the undercurrent between Logan and Coach Ramsey had deepened into something heavier, more consuming. Every movement felt charged. Every shared glance felt longer than it should have. And though neither of them spoke of that night again, the silence was no longer a shield. It was a wound that refused to close. Logan felt it when Coach corrected his form during shooting drills, his hand grazing just below his elbow. Felt it when he called his name during plays, voice catching slightly like it carried more than strategy. Felt it most in the quiet moments after practice, when the others were gone and the echo of sneakers had faded. And all that was left was breath and space and something unsaid that vibrated between them. Coach had begun avoiding the locker room when Logan lingered, retreating instead to his office. But Logan noticed how the door was never fully shut, how the lights inside always stayed on a little longer when he stayed to shoot alone. One evening, after an especially brutal session, Logan wandered past the threshold of that half-closed door, his hair still damp with sweat, heart still racing for more than just the game. Coach was at his desk, hunched over a clipboard, but he didn't look up. "I'm starting to think you live here," he said quietly, not unkindly. Logan leaned against the doorframe. "Maybe I do, or maybe I just like the company." Coach lifted his head slowly, eyes tired but warm. There was a trace of a smile there, buried beneath restraint. "You like pushing boundaries, huh?" Logan stepped inside, letting the door drift shut behind him. "Only when I think something on the other side is worth it." The air between them pulled taut like a wire. Coach stood, his height still commanding even in exhaustion. "You keep showing up, Logan. Every night, like you're waiting for me to slip." "I'm not waiting," Logan said, voice low. "I'm hoping." Coach took a step forward, then another, until he was close enough for Logan to feel his breath again, that same warmth, that same dangerous pull. "You don't know what you're asking for," he said, eyes searching Logan's face. The room seemed to spin slower. Logan's hands were at his sides, clenched against the instinct to reach out. Coach's chest rose and fell just inches from his, slow and heavy. "I've fought this," Coach said, voice rough. "But you make it impossible." Logan didn't answer. He didn't have to. Coach's hand lifted, hesitant at first, then sure, cupping Logan's jaw like he'd thought about it for a long time. Logan's breath caught. The heat of that touch burned through him, lighting every nerve. They stood like that, staring, breathing, trembling with the weight of everything unspoken. And then, slowly, cautiously, Coach leaned in. Their foreheads touched first, then their noses, a brush of skin. And then, their lips met. It was not explosive, not rushed. It was careful, slow, aching with restraint and longing, and the deep, hollow ache of denied desire. Logan's hands rose to Coach's waist, anchoring them both in the moment. His skin tingled, his spine arched slightly, every part of him alive with sensation. When they parted, barely an inch between them, Coach rested his forehead against Logan's. "This is going to change everything," he whispered. "I know." Coach pulled back just enough to meet his eyes. We can't pretend anymore. Then let's not. They stood in the dim light of that small office, shadows wrapping around them like a secret. The world outside went on as usual. Cars in the lot, night rolling in. But inside those four walls, something had shifted permanently. They had crossed the line. The kiss didn't unravel everything at once. It was slower than that, like a tide that pulled at the edges of their carefully constructed lives, washing away resistance grain by grain. Days passed, and on the surface, nothing changed. Coach Ramsey barked commands during drills, watched plays with a scrutinizing eye, and offered encouragement when it was earned. Logan ran hard, passed sharp, kept his head in the game. But underneath the rhythm of normalcy, everything pulsed with new energy, deeper, heavier, impossible to ignore. Their touches were more cautious in public now, not more frequent. But their absence meant more. An unbrushed shoulder on the court, a hand withheld during instruction. All of it felt louder in its silence than anything spoken aloud. What had begun as subtle gravity between them now burned beneath the surface like an ember. They didn't speak of that night again, not directly. But something in Logan's gaze said he carried it everywhere he went. And something in Coach's quiet steadiness said it lived in him too. There were moments. Stolen seconds in hallways, weight room corridors, late nights when the gym was empty, where they let their guard down just a little. A look that lingered, a word that softened, a closeness that hovered on the edge of another kiss. And then came Friday night. The team had played hard, the gym filled with shouts and sneakers and the pulse of a close win. When the final whistle blew, celebration erupted. Logan high-fived teammates, grinned through sweat, let the adrenaline wash over him. But his eyes kept drifting to the bench, to the man who hadn't looked away all game. Later, when the team filtered out, towels slung over shoulders, music echoing from someone's phone, Logan hung back. He told himself he was just hydrating, stretching, killing time. But he was waiting. Coach appeared a few minutes later in the locker room doorway, still in his game clothes, the lanyard looped around his wrist. "You staying late again?" Logan shrugged. Didn't feel like leaving. They didn't speak as they walked through the building. The hallways were dim now, the buzz of the vending machines the only sound. When Coach unlocked his office and stepped inside, Logan followed, shutting the door behind them like instinct. Coach stood by the window, looking out at the empty lot. "I keep telling myself to stop," he said quietly. "That it's enough to feel it and let it pass." Logan took a step forward, voice steady but tender. "But it doesn't pass." Coach turned, and for a moment his expression broke open. Something raw flickering behind his eyes. "No," he admitted. "It doesn't." Logan reached out, fingers brushing Coach's hand. "Then don't fight it. Not right now." The space between them dissolved like mist. Coach moved first this time, one hand at Logan's waist, the other gently cradling the back of his neck. Their lips met again, deeper, fuller this time, no longer tentative, but rich with everything they'd held back. Logan melted into him, letting the warmth of the touch dissolve the last of his hesitation. Their bodies pressed closer, and the world shrank to the heat between them, the scratch of fabric, the tremble of breath, the scent of skin. Logan's hand slid up Coach's back, fingertips curling into his shirt as if anchoring himself to something that felt terrifying and inevitable all at once. Coach pulled away just enough to speak, his voice husky. "I can't give you promises. I'm not asking for them," Logan said. "Just this. They sank onto the old couch in the corner, not in a rush, not clumsy, but slow and aching and reverent. It was a moment carved out of time, each touch layered with emotion, each breath a confession. Nothing rushed, nothing taken, only given, only felt. Their foreheads met again as they sat entwined, neither speaking, both listening to the shared thunder of their hearts. Coach finally exhaled. "You scare me." Logan nodded. "You make me feel more alive than I've ever felt." The words settled in the room, weightless and heavy all at once. They didn't move for a long time, just stayed there, curled into each other like the world outside didn't matter. In that space, nothing else existed, only the warmth of closeness, the unspoken truth of two men who had crossed a line and weren't turning back. And yet, something deeper waited just beneath that stillness. Something unresolved. But for now, for this breath, this closeness was enough. The days after felt different, not in the way that demanded explanation, but in the way that colors feel sharper after rain. Logan moved through practice with new clarity. His movements were crisper, his rhythm more confident, and the spark in his eyes, though unnoticed by most, was unmistakable to Coach Ramsey. But with that clarity came weight. The silence between them in public was now more than discretion. It was a shield. A fragile membrane stretched tight between longing and reality. In the gym, Coach called out plays like always, kept his distance during drills, clapped shoulders after good form, but his hand never lingered too long on Logan's back anymore. He didn't need to. The touch from that night still echoed across Logan's skin like a permanent imprint. The world outside hadn't changed, but something inside both of them had. It all came to a head late one evening. The sky had turned a velvet blue beyond the gym's windows, and the sound of bouncing balls had long gone silent. Logan stayed late again, claiming extra practice, though he hadn't touched a basketball in over 20 minutes. He just sat on the bench, elbows on knees, staring at the polished wood floor, heart pacing against the slow ache of confusion and desire. He didn't hear the office door open behind him, but he felt the presence before the first word was spoken. "You're still here." Logan didn't turn. "I could say the same about you." Coach Ramsey stepped forward slowly, hands in his pockets, his voice low. "We keep doing this." Logan looked up now, finally meeting his gaze. "Doing what?" Coach hesitated, then sat beside him, leaving a few inches of space, as if afraid of tipping something over the edge. Walking right up to the edge of something, and not knowing if we're going to fall or jump. Logan turned his head, his voice steadier than he expected. "Maybe it's time to stop fearing the fall." Coach looked at him, really looked at him, and for a moment, all the weariness in his eyes lifted, replaced by something softer, something open. Silence stretched between them like a held breath. And then, slowly, Logan reached over and took Coach's hand. Coach didn't flinch. He laced their fingers together. "You're not alone," he whispered. "You've never been." They sat there like that, two figures in the quiet dark of an empty gym where so much had started and so much had stayed unsaid. Their hands held 1,000 truths neither had been brave enough to speak until now. Logan shifted closer, pressing his shoulder into Coach's. The warmth was immediate, familiar, right? Coach turned to him, eyes darker now, gleaming not with hesitation, but with certainty. Then, in the hush of the gym, with the smell of polished floors and sweat in the air, he leaned in and kissed him again. Firm, full, and without fear. There was no pause this time, no looking back. just the unmistakable truth of two men who had found something undeniable in one another and refused to let it slip away. When they finally pulled apart, breathless, they rested their foreheads together. The tension that had gripped them for so long now melted into something steadier, deeper, unbreakable. No one would ever understand it fully. No one would ever know all the moments that led them here, the glances, the silence, the yearning held behind every word. But they would, and that was enough.